everyone. This
Hi.
is Meat and Poison with Matt and Andy. Today's the 29th of June. We are filming an episode about a French writer called Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. The writer of a very famous book and one of the best-selling books of all time, The Little Prince.
Among other works.
Among other works, obviously.
I was going to start with a little quote from the Little Prince, because it's very beautiful.
And maybe also explain it to the listeners, because
you didn't understand.
If I'm being completely honest, I didn't get it first.
It's you and you alone will have the stars as no one else has them. So, which I think is just the general idea that nobody is going to see the world or experience your humanity or the human condition as you yourself will. Everybody's going to have this in a different way, or experience in a different way.
Which speaks to the author itself, who was an adventurer.
Absolutely, an adventurer. Yeah. Born in France, near to Lyon, to quite a wealthy, well, not wealthy, an aristocratic family. He didn't have a lot of money anymore.
Yeah.
Even though he did still seem to manage to go to... I wouldn't call them impoverished. I mean, the guy still went to a Swiss boarding school, so I don't think they were that hard up. I think they were hard up in aristocratic terms, maybe.
Well, they didn't take everything away.
He left the castle. It's like,
and
wait,
the rolls.
Be reasonable.
And a few planes.
We need the 20 bedrooms. But it was definitely not a studious or a particularly successful young man.
No.
Didn't really know what he wanted to do. Did fall in love with aviation at an early age. At the age of 12, he had his first flight. But went on to have just the most unbelievable life. This guy...
Brief but unbelievable.
Brief, but really, he pushed the limits of adventure in his job. I think he absolutely loved planes, so he did his military service where he basically bribed his way into being taught how to fly whilst he was just a mechanic. He flew a little bit for the Air Corps there, and then after his military service, he goes on to work for these mail routes, so flying
between France and South America. If you can imagine at the beginning of the 20th century,
this is
South
like
America.
1922, 1923.
Across the Atlantic,
rickety open-top planes. I mean, flying down to Dakar from South France, and then flying in Southern America, so from Argentina to the tip of Chile, and
which just to me is I haven't ever done this flight today, and I imagine it's a long flight.
I
even
like
today.
being in planes now, and
this
and I have alcohol.
Terrifying reason for Matt.
So. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking...
This is his absolute nightmares. This is last day on Earth.
It's a totally different form of aviation, though, because, I mean, you're really flying maximum 1,000 feet, so it sounds a lot, but
you were having a meltdown on a plane to Berlin when you saw a propeller.
I don't like propeller planes, to be fair. But they crashed a lot.
Please.
They crashed a lot. I mean,
of course. Yeah.
And he survives them.
Exactly.
It's not like being in a plane crash nowadays. It's kind of, it's definitely a different form of aviation. It's absolutely not this comparable.
They weren't flying that high and maybe not that fast. All right, well, let's...
So after this incredible career with the airmail, flying all of these amazing routes, he then joins the French Air Force in the fight against Nazis. He runs reconnaissance missions until...
He became a military reconnaissance pilot,
And we should say that during all of this, he's writing books, and he's already become quite a famous person in France. So this is not his only job. This is his day job. He's also writing, and he's creating very successful career as an author. Until he then... until the fall of France to the Nazis, and at which point he... is exiled essentially to the United States, to New York, where he writes The Little Prince.
Yeah, during his 3-year stint in America, for which he never saw a sou or a cent of royalties. Back in the Dixie, he died in 1944. Did we say why we're drinking this wine?
No.
So there's a reason for it. We're trying to find a reason for every occasion.
It's essentially one of my favorite wines, so we found a reason for it. He
not too far-fetched.
No, he died. His plane was lost over somewhere over the Med, in 1944, and they didn't recover the wreck until 1998, so 54 years later, and they recovered it just off the coast of south of France, off the coast of Provence, and hence we are drinking a nice rosé from Provence
the region we both love.
Yeah, in memory of where they found his body, which is just super.
We've talked about his popularity as a global popularity as a writer of the writer of The Little Prince. Obviously, 150 million copies and translated into over 300 languages. That's a lot. If people don't know the statistics, it's actually the best-selling book together with The Lord of the Rings. That was written, I think.
Best-selling fiction, right?
Yeah. Correct. So the popularity of his book is absolutely unquestionable.
You said, because in France, I was listening to a podcast about the chap who actually found his wreck, who was a guy called Luc Van Vel, I think. He was really sort of anyway. He said that in France there's sort of a recommendation that you read the Little Prince twice in your life, so once as a child and once as an adult at least, because you're going to get totally different things from it. I've only read it as an adult, but you did read it as a child. So
I read it as a small child. Yeah.
What was its effect on you as a?
That book definitely resonated with me. I think my mother actually tried to teach me and raise me according to some of the standards professed in the book. So she used to tell me, I remember the Little Prince, he used to tidy up his planet first after waking up, which I did. And I think that some of the
super cute though.
Yeah, I think I still remember that. I don't believe that I remember that now. And whenever I need to tidy up I actually still have that. I still have that need to tidy up the space I work in, or where I have that need sometimes to tidy up my planet before I start something important.
Yeah.
The Little Prince in any way, because The Little Prince is actually written in a way which I think is what's great about this book. Children will still love the book, and adults will obviously find new things in it. But children will relate to the style of the book and how it's written. We talked about it earlier, and we talked about a book, Catcher in the Rye, another book that's written.
Yeah, we were talking about
the child's
books
point of
that
view.
you can revisit as well as an adult. Catcher in the Rye, if you obviously.
One of I haven't read it in a long time, but yeah.
And that's one I think you could read again and again at different stages in your life and keep taking new lessons from it, seeing different levels or based on your experience, which is part of the beauty of The Little Prince. Is that as a child it's a basic morality tale, and I think as you get older and learn probably more of the negative things about humanity, you see it as a kind of a cautionary and it's heavily critical of modern life, of Western civilization, really, of the pursuit of money and possessions
over other things, and over friendships, over matters of heart. So I was going to ask you about some of the children's books that you might have read as a child and you like revisiting as an adult.
Yeah, I was looking at Rudyard Kipling again, and his Just So stories. I don't know if you know them. They're all.
I know some of them. Yeah.
They're morality tales based around this, like why the camel got his hump, how the whale got his tail. I love a whale. And
we all love a whale.
Actually, there's so many similarities between Rudyard Kipling and Antoine de Saint-Exupéry in terms of there's this upper class background. There's this. Rudyard Kipling was born in India, and this is kind of empire-type mentality, should I say, of
empire.
Yeah, empire. That the world is so small to a certain class of people, which I feel comes across whilst reading about Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's life. He didn't seem to allow small ideas such as this is on the other side of another continent to stop him from.
No.
Doing something. And and also
his job was very sort of France-centric.
Yeah.
all of his jobs were sort of France.
They were French companies
French
other
companies,
parts of the
colonies of France and Africa. So
no, and Rudyard Kipling's life is quite similar in terms of that. There are quite a lot of parallels, and his writing as well. Particularly these Just So stories, and the Jungle Book are things you
one
can
of my favorites.
read as an adult and still, they're still absolutely delightful. I think partly because they're written so long ago that there was slightly less infantilizing.
I wanted to be Bagheera. Sorry.
No, but there was. Panther. I agree. No, I was going to say because they're writing so long ago. I think there's this. They don't quite infantilize children so much.
No.
So actually, they're novels. They're children's novels, as opposed to books nowadays. Obviously, with notable exceptions, tend to be quite basic for children.
Do you think Harry Potter is basic?
No, that's what I meant with notable exceptions.
Okay.
But I don't think you've got that level of challenging literature. Reading Rudyard Kipling now, reading the Jungle Book particularly. I mean, Just So stories are very simple, but reading the Jungle Book it's quite a hefty novel.
I reread this. I was visiting friends, and you remember I sent you some of the bits from Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass because I reread it, but in German for the first time.
Yeah.
I was looking at some of the bits that were because I was just wondering how the book translated, and even sent you some of one of the bits that I found really
with the dormouse is talking about the three sisters that live down a well and live on treacle, and in German it's not a well, it's a miller's wheel, so a Mühlrad.
Yeah.
And the reason for that translation is because of the alliteration with the M that comes later in the passage.
Yeah, so in English they drew treacle and they also drew pictures. Well. So there's a pun there, but in German it's malen for paint and malen for to mill something like coffee, for example.
Oh, I see. So it's...
Speaking of French literature, who would you say is the most celebrated French author? If we asked like a person on the street, do you think that they would name Antoine?
I mean, depending on who you picked on the street, they might just punch you in the face.
Yeah, but I mean, if you just ask like 10 people,
I don't think a lot of people know Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's name. I think a lot of people know The Little Prince, The Petit Prince. I don't necessarily think everyone knows it's a French book originally because it's been so widely translated.
Because it was translated into so many languages, it's become like...
Yeah, it's become global. So I think specifically related to France, I would say Victor Hugo, maybe Alexandre Dumas.
One of my friends, Benjamin, would be furious.
You're not a fan of Victor Hugo?
I love French literature, you know that, but I just can't stand Victor Hugo. Because it's just old-fashioned, dramatic.
Of course he's old-fashioned. I mean, he's writing,
wordy,
200-300 years ago?
Wordy.
Wait, I don't get it. How can you not like Victor Hugo in French, but you like Dickens in English? That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, to me, there's just too much doom and gloom. That's why I don't like Dostoevsky. Maybe it's just like you're there and you want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
He's a fine French. I actually like his poetry more.
Do you
like his poetry more?
Dumas?
I love Dumas as a child. Come on.
Yeah. That's another one really, because like The Count of Monte Cristo, for example, which is actually the only one I've ever read of his.
Is this getting too highbrow?
Well, it's fine. We'll edit. Maybe just let it go.
No, this bit is staying.
No, The Count of Monte Cristo is...
That's your favourite?
Is a children's book?
Yeah, well, I read it as
it's quite easy
not
to
like
read.
A children.
I remember reading it. I was living in France, and it's a big book. If
I
you
read
haven't
it as like a 12-year-old. That's not a child.
It is a bit but it's
child. Yes.
Young adult, I suppose. I couldn't put it down as an adult. I mean, it's easy to race through, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I mean, they're
incredible book.
Swashbuckling adventures, aren't they?
Unputdownable.
Unputdownable.
My favorite one by Dumas, and I know that this is going to be edited out, but I will still say it, is The Three Musketeers.
See, I've never read it.
Oh, that's the story that just like formed my life. Anyway, I am enjoying this topic, But I would like for us to move on to France because we've both got experience living and working
we've
there.
got to talk about France. Indeed.
And we're drinking French wine, we're talking about French literature-ish, and definitely a French writer who's globally celebrated. And I'm going to ask you something about living in France that will maybe bring us back to the title of our podcast, Meat and Poison. So you've worked and lived there. What's your... I'm going to ask you about your experience working there. What's your meat and poison about working in France? Do you have your likes and dislikes?
A poison would say a controversial one, I think.
Maybe living and working both.
Yeah. For me, the Académie Française, which is the body that protects and promotes French culture and language and arts, I find to be I don't think it's the best thing because I think it's quite controlling, and I think it's falsely defending or stopping the development of the language and culture in France, because it's sort of trying to put it in this bubble that it doesn't get affected from English, particularly English influences. So for example, with modern words, which often in many languages are just taken over one-to-one from the English if they were invented in English. In France, they will create a new word for everything. For example, for computer, there's ordinateur.
But there's a reason
I can't
for
think
it.
what were you saying for chat?
Yeah, blah blah.
Yeah.
For chat.
And they then have these rules that you actually shouldn't legally be using the English words in offices.
Well, how would you say the word chat in French?
Chat.
Well, it just doesn't work because it's not a Germanic language.
It sounds like chat.
It's chat, and that's one of the reasons. I
know, but there's also things like meeting. Like for example, when I was working there, meeting is widely used in French for a meeting, but officially, if you're in a French company, you should be writing rendezvous.
Yeah. Such a beautiful word.
It is a beautiful word,
in English.
but it's stopping the natural development of the language, and I think that's silly, because if we were to do that in English, for example, the Americans wouldn't understand anything that was going on anymore on television.
Are you with us? How many listeners have we lost?
God knows where the Australians would be if we
Let's just move on before we alienate.
No, but you know what I'm saying?
You
know what I'm saying? A language is a living body, and it develops on its own, and it should be allowed to.
Yeah.
Or no?
No, I disagree. Well, I don't know. I actually, it's one of the most enjoyable things for me in French culture, how protective they are of it. And because it's, first of all, let's be real, French culture isn't something to be ashamed of.
Oh, I'm not saying that in any way.
I don't think any culture is something to be ashamed of, but I think that French culture especially is so rich and so all-pervading and so popular in so many other cultures. I adore their music, I adore being there, I adore their literature, love the language. I'm a guest there, I can't really tell them what to do. It has existed, l'Académie Française has existed for a while. I guess it's
I'm not telling them what to do.
No, but you obviously like a bit more critical about it, and I celebrate that.
You just want to get your Legion d'honneur when you're...
I can't wait for this to happen. I'm still very young for this. Thanks. I'm sure I'll get this. I'm sure this call is coming down the pike.
I'm going to do some sucking up then. My meat.
We love you.
I would say the working.
Oh yeah, this is what he likes. Don't forcibly change the language, but please give me 35.
Give me a break.
Give me a lunch break of 2 hours.
Give me a lunch break. No, I just love, they have these 35-hour working weeks, which I think is changing. And there's a lot changing there anyway.
No, the people will definitely, they will just assassinate Macron if he changes that week.
I loved it when I was there, conversely to working in London, for example. There was this very strict, the whole office took a lunch break together.
True.
And sat down and ate together, and it's such a positive thing to do, particularly if you're in a smaller office. No, in any office actually. it's just so great to be able to sit and eat with your colleagues, and you're not expected to answer your phone. Your calls, there may be someone answering phone, but they're told it's lunchtime, you will get a call back. It's not kind of a sad sandwich from a plastic packet at your desk whilst you're trying to answer a phone call, and it's
London.
Yeah.
Back to London.
It makes you, and they do have it here in Germany.
Any office, small or big.
They do have it here in Germany a little bit, like you wouldn't be made to feel guilty here for taking a lunch break.
Oh no.
But in France it's a step further. It would be totally acceptable to go to a restaurant and have a glass of wine with a colleague at lunch. And it's just great. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it really just enhances your workday because it just gives you this little highlight in your day. And if I could move to Spain where you get a nap after lunch, I'd be even happier.
He basically just wants to move countries as long as it's
until I get a
convenient
based on lunch break.
Yeah. As long as he can take a nap. I'm actually not going to go there.
That's going to be like at the end of an interview question.
We've had wait a second. Today, I'm not going to say it. It's not a working day. We're working. He took a nap of an hour while I was working just because he got tired.
I needed a break.
Yeah, he needed a break. Anyway, so speaking about, so what you've touched upon is there's a term for it in cross-cultural management called, so the French are actually a polychronic culture, which means that their relationship with time is not linear. So we are more monochronic people, and especially the Germans or the people from the UK and the US are more monochronic. So it means for the French, and you said you're not expected to take a call, the relationships, the time that you're spending with whoever you're spending your time with at the moment is much more important than some arbitrary appointments or schedules or whatever, which I find very modern.
It is very modern, yeah. I mean, yeah,
but also fascinatingly heartwarming in today's environment. I'm hoping that this is.
It is very modern in terms of the whole wellness and mindfulness movement,
work-life balance, and the millennials. We are not them.
We are millennials.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm very firmly a millennial.
You are. You need a nap.
That's so true.
The paramount feature of a millennial. They need a nap. So sometimes it's difficult.
Churchill took naps, can I just say?
Yeah, because he was basically just pounding down a bottle of whiskey a day.
This is true. Oh, I miss the days when you can run a country drunk.
So their non-linear relationship with time is my meat. I like that.
Oh, okay.
I enjoy that because I can. Well, to be honest with you, it's not something I particularly like or dislike. It's just something that I can live with, and I think it's beautiful to celebrate this difference because some Germans.
It's a really positive thing.
But my poison would be just the fact that the French can, especially in business, sometimes seem a bit too autocratic and centralized. For countries like Germany, especially, a consensus-seeking people in every.
Germany is exhausting in terms of trying to get
to
a final decision from anyone.
True,
it's quite hard.
But in France, there will always be a person who is expected to make the final cut,
to sign off. Yeah,
that's probably one of the things that would be. In terms of working
and as in
them.
kind of, okay, Monsieur Renard is not in till Wednesday, so no one can do it until that happens, until he's
done. And them being sometimes more concerned about protecting their turf rather than collaborating with you because,
Oh, I see.
They can be some, we want our opinion to be visible and considered, and so.
But do you not think that comes from the very sort of socialist bent of France, which is to protect a workers' rights almost at all costs, and so you wouldn't ever overstep your mark by doing someone else's job, because
that to me is a shade of l'Académie Française rather than anything else.
Yeah,
being protective about and being kind of my country. Not in a nasty way, not like a MAGA hat type of way, but still being kind of very proud of their country and being sometimes overprotective about it, which can be again, it could lead to misunderstandings and resistances in work.
No, but I meant this sort of autocratic thing in that,
Yeah.
and not wanting, someone else not just saying, okay, well, that's fine. You have to go through the right channels. And I think that's maybe part of this kind of socialist culture that protects workers' rights, that you don't, or, the heavy unionization and things like that of workers there, that you don't do someone else's job. Even if, your customer needs it, it's absolutely not okay to say, well, I'll just do that because this person's not here, because you're taking away someone else's work. And that's not something definitely that happens in England.
No.
And I know in the States, for example, it's much more dog eat dog. And that kind of someone, you take more than your 10 days holiday for a year and someone else is gonna fill your shoes down quickly.
Not even comparable.
Yeah.
Two countries couldn't be farther apart. We normally wrap up on some recommendations. Today we've talked about Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince, a book ostensibly written for children, but also can be widely enjoyed by adults. We've talked about children's literature, we've talked about France. So I'm going to ask you about some of your recommendations, maybe in terms of children's books and maybe something around France, if you would like to chip in.
Yeah, I would recommend a children's book that I loved, that I think everyone in my family loved, and is a great thing to read again, particularly in the summer as an adult, which is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. It's a beautiful view of bucolic English life, told through the tales of
maybe
anthropomorphized animals living in a river. I mean, I think most people will have heard of it or read it anyway, but it's a wonderful one to revisit, and it is so perfect in the summer as well. And it just gives, well, for me as an Englishman, particularly from south of England, it gives me a feeling, really warm feeling of home, and it's a lovely book to revisit as an adult.
Lost all northerners.
If you
It's fine. Oh my God, what's happening today? Episode 2.
In terms of
we are loving people.
In terms of French, I was thinking of a French restaurant here in Düsseldorf for our Düsseldorf listeners and viewers, which is called Café de Bretagne.
Oh, I love that place.
A great place, fabulous seafood, fabulous mussels. Last time I was there, I had mussels with roquefort and cream, and I mean, I probably could have had a heart attack walking out the door, but oh my God, it was so good. It is on
so many
Benrathenstraße number 7, next to Karlsplatz.
We're going to provide the address.
Great French food.
Love that place.
Good.
It's very pretentious, but I love that place.
Is it
not really. It's not.
quite laid
It's actually
back.
not. Yeah, it's quite. But
I
it
do
kind
feel
of
like
looks-
everything on there. I looked at it first and I was like, this is a great place for a date, and then everything on their menu will make you smell hideous.
True.
So I think
as
maybe a
any-
second or third date, once you've kissed them already, wouldn't go there.
But to be fair,
first
in
kiss.
France, if you went to a proper French restaurant and actually had all the proper French food that all of your friends around you were having,
true.
it would be
If everyone
the
smells
same
the same,
result.
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, my recommendation is the obvious one. In terms of books, I am a great lover of the Alice books by Lewis Carroll. Really adore them, read them many times as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, in many languages, and adored them in all of them. And something French, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry actually lived, I think it was a very short while, but still he lived in a place in France where I used to live and work, Strasbourg, and there's a great place in Strasbourg called L'Épicerie. That's the name of the restaurant. We're going to provide the details somewhere here.
In the description.
In the description, thank you. It's such a great place. I'm not going to describe this for you. Google it and you will see why. You can eat tartine and drink French wine in the absolutely most French atmosphere imaginable. So this is it for today.
Yeah, we should say we're filming at the Funky Deli, as always. I think we forgot to mention that at the beginning, which is also run by a lovely French man called Sammy. Also, we wanted to ask for your recommendations for our viewers and listeners and for us on any children's books you've enjoyed as an adult revisiting. What were your favorites? Let us know in the comments that we might have a read.
And the next episode comes out on the 6th of July, and it's going to be about Frida Kahlo, a Mexican painter. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about her life, her legacy,
work.
her stormy relationship with Diego Rivera, her little affair with Trotsky.
And there's also the amazing film with
Salma Hayek.
In it, which you introduced me to, which is a brilliant
God, everything,
life, so.
Her bisexuality, and we're gonna.
I've got rather a jazzy flower crown that we can.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do something. We're gonna fashion something up to make the episode even more authentic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.